Okay. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. My name is Jenna Hamid, and I'm the programs manager at the Center for Book Arts. So just for housekeeping, if everyone can keep their mics and videos off throughout the event, so we can maintain the bandwidth, that would be great. Feel free to post responses and questions in the chat. We're going to have a discussion after the readings and presentations. And we also have closed captioning available. On the bottom of the Zoom screen, there's an option to turn on closed captioning. So for those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome. The Center for Book Arts is located in the heart of Manhattan on 27th Street and Broadway. We're an institution dedicated to exploring the book as an art object. Since the pandemic, we've transitioned much of our programming, including this program, online. We host classes, lectures, panels, and all different types of events. The Broadside Reading Series features 6 writers from various backgrounds and writing disciplines, and they collaborate with the center's artists-in-residence and community members to create a collection of limited edition letterpress-printed broadsides. The collaboration explores the relationship of text, image, and design, incorporating the artist's visual conveyance of the writer's poetry and prose. This season's readings are curated by Joey De Jesus, who will be featuring tonight's poets, Saretta Morgan and Marie Hinson. Following the poetry readings, we'll hear from the Broadside artists. So Alex Pentecost-Varon is with us tonight, and I will be presenting Delphi Basilicaro's Broadside on his behalf. Programs like these are not possible without the support of our audience, of our donors, of our students, and our friends. I highly encourage you all to consider becoming members or donating to the center to keep our programming afloat during these trying times. I'd also like to acknowledge the support from the New York State Council on the Arts, with the support of Andrew Cuomo and the New York State Legislature, and by public funds from the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs in partnership with City Council. So now I will introduce Joey De Jesus. Joey is the author of Hoax, Forthcoming Operating System, Knocked the Threshold of Madness by Atlas Review in 2019, and co-author alongside Sade Lene of Writing Voice into Archive, Volume 1, edited by Jennifer Tamayo with support from UC Berkeley's Center for Race and Gender. Joey received the 2019-2020 BRIC RFP Projects Room Commission and the 2017 NYFA NISCA Fellowship in Poetry. Poems have appeared in Poem a Day, Bettering American Poetry, the Brooklyn Rail, the New Museum, and elsewhere. Joey is co-editor at Apogee Journal and sits on the advisory committee of No Dear magazine. Joey lives in Ridgewood, where they ran an openly queer abolitionist campaign for New York State Assembly District 38 in 2020. So without further ado, I welcome Joey De Jesus.
Thank you, Jenna, and to the Center for Book Arts for providing us this venue and evening. Again, I just am so thrilled and honored to have been invited to curate this series, which featured Sean D. Henry Smith and Jimena Lucero, and then Layla Ortiz and Zephyr Lasowski. And tonight, the last of the events features Saretta Morgan and Marie Hinson, 2 dear confidants and friends. And yeah, I'm so excited. So I'm here in Ridgewood, Queens, Lenape, Canarsie land. And I think we're gonna begin with Saretta. Saretta and I met several years ago. I don't even recall when, but you were living in Bed-Stuy at the time.
I remember we met at what's that? It's not there anymore. It was like a library and reading space in Bushwick, kind of across from the
Mellow
train.
Pages.
Yes, we both gave a reading at Mellow Pages with Sarah Jane Stoner
That's
and
right.
maybe someone else.
Yes, yes. Oh wow, good memory. Yeah. And we've been friends ever since. Yeah. And you've since left. I'm going to read your bio so that people get a sense of where you are in the world right now, and to hand it over, because I'm so excited to catch up with you in this way. I miss you on the East. You're missed on the East Coast. Okay. So, Saretta Morgan is an artist, gardener, and author of the chapbooks Feeling Upon Arrival, 2018, and Room for Counter Interior in 2017. She lives between Phoenix and Mojave Valley in Arizona, where she teaches creative writing at Arizona State University and participates in the humanitarian aid efforts of No More Deaths. Recent work can be found in Triple Canopy Colorado Review and the Academy of American Poets. Since 2016, she has received grants and fellowships from the Jerome Foundation, Lower Manhattan Cultural Council, Arizona Commission on the Arts, the Center for African American Poetry and Poetics, and Headland Center for the Arts, among several other venues. Saretta is a virtuosic poet and a dear friend, and I'm so thrilled to get to hear her work tonight. Okay, Saretta, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Oh, there's so many homies in the audience. I'm so happy. And my mom, shout out to Wendy Jo Myers and her beautiful picture. You all can see it. Thank you, Joey. Thank you for Center for Book Arts. Thank you for Marie, my co-star, or I don't know what we want to call ourselves, not stars, but the other belle of the ball tonight. I'm going to show a video. So since I've been in Arizona, I've done a lot of kind of like work out, like in very close relationship to land. So I'm right now on Mojave land, and when I'm in Phoenix, I'm on Akmal Atham land. And I live with someone, my partner, and kind of the family that I've also entered into through them. They're the original inhabitants of these lands, and so I kind of just constantly am like living alongside that acknowledgement. And so it's made me think a lot more about how I engage with different aspects of ecology and the social structures around them. And yeah, so I'm going to share a video that I made like very soon after moving here, almost 2 years ago. I'm going to show that while I'm reading, and the video will end. And at that point, I'll probably just turn it off and I'll keep reading, but then you'll see my face instead. Okay, so this first piece, I'm going to read from two things. One is it's like a manifesto that I'm figuring out. The title of it is Then We Did Not Die, and then I'm going to move it from that into Alt Nature, which is a very long love poem. Both of these are longer than what I'll read here, but just I chose some excerpts. Then We Did Not Die. Story is produced as a form negotiates landscape. Mass in syntax, collectivity, autonomy, and origins. Language for radical shape comes only through accumulation. It's home. With regard to collectivity, within the point where one impression is restrained, yet another continues, we find an impasse. This word I use to suggest active projection. Impasse. One origin for the terminal point of a specific collectivity, the hour at which relationship must shift. The mass, non-viable through speech and fully conceded to image, axum, iris, and flora, materially constituted, will read figures through variation. The penetration fell fields and foundation, the cause of rupture. Text, analog observation versus narrating what is primarily geometric, not time, not question, except the wonder of its own temporality. The other text. This is form understanding, forms through which understanding passes, proxy to the conditions from which they emerge, drawing intelligence. Being encounters itself and its other, surfaces through vegetation, such a simple thing. All space holds a collective body, amorously or otherwise. What then comprises impasse? Assume narration as transitive in grammatical and logical sense. If a body passes always through a landscape and that landscape is not vacant, then the landscape at certain points impresses the body. Physically, physiologically, then those marks are indicative of how and what that landscape resists, allows, repels, contains, blunt trauma to fucking, each worn in flesh. Whereas oppression may be a question of velocity, erasure is necessarily one of form. Skin resists being broken, burns discolor the necks, unwilling yet obedient. Within geometric study, two bodies are felt identical according to the degree by which each shifts without being punctured or erased. This has no meaning to a moment deformed by thirst, though moaning continues to carry. Wire knots regardless of density or scale. Root silence curls under, without geometric study, disparate wounds are overlooked. That them we survived is a formal position, expression to enter. Afterlife asserts we's shadow on a Precambrian wall. Concentration in cubits, weight in flesh it would take to hold water. Length stench of afternoon, bright in orange. Population status, a host suffering or dead. Species delimitation, micro-endemic harvestment, perforations lean from dermis to abandoned station. Arise the cracked sore, its right to life is the right according to. Them we from the mouth of person or animal, irrational yet ripe in number, internal to light. Them we tongue between wars, facets of lung denoted, fingered one by one. Having survived probable hypothermia, exposure, blunt force as a consequence of, due to consequences of feeling upon knuckles happening under, where exposure is an alternative, a thick nose skeletonized, which looks different according to everyone. To be with whom one cannot leave their body, to study their hands and receive the untoward gift extended only by them we who endured disobedience, who made it through slow practice of disavowal. Every object, every moment has its afterimage. James Baldwin shows up to the tri-state shooting range. Jordan and Enzaldua hike Brown Canyon. They spot a rare, beardless triannulate, hugging parched northern boundaries of her species range. Along the west border of Buenos Aires National Wildlife Refuge and southern Arizona, where masked bobwhite quail are few but on the rise, a woman, Im Ramirez, was found 5 weeks after dying in the wash that intersects 286 at mile 10. Though monsoons did not arrive, trees on both sides would be overtaken, an unaccountable green. Beyond rational weight, words assume a physics of hunger and ash according to each shadowy interior. The Mexican jaguar treads backward to observe what flickers against a wall. The Department of Interior studies effects of stress and fire on vegetation via high-rise, high-res satellite panometrics. No two droughts are alike. In this way, even arms in a praise dance cannot. To take on and in doing so both manifest and relent, them we who survived a future conditioned to reform rebar between breakfast and chapped thighs. Largeness, them who sink bellies open into brown water. Sade, crying everyone's tears into wounds having sealed each gill. Alt nature. Skin blades open the river, undressing stones. Your word for goose skips miniature shadows against the current. This love story, a horse still drunk from war, named for the incredible absence of her jaw. We look up through jasper eyes from the mud. Dearth is no name for a horse, though her tendon-paled underside, diseased trope harboring a gentle eye. Banks thicken at low tide, the river decreasing year within year. Out slowly, I expose your thigh and want to fill you. At Nevada, the river hooks south. Hoover, Davis, Parker, Laguna. I dip my hand in the bath over your hair. Bending, I ask you not to shave. Our geography emerges another form of story. Only deserts know the slow and complete life of water. We negotiate the record, wash the body returned. In your desert, I load my anxiety into 9mm magazines. Our favorite mountain, boundary cone, where alone I watch a baby donkey die. A foal is a donkey of less than 1 year, after which time females become fillies. Upon castration, a male is gelding. A female adult is a mare. Driving alone, I watch a foal die. One animal blocks the road. Another bends her neck over a body heaving and dull. I pull the trigger and even the accurate rounds push peanut-colored clouds from the berm. Even the future of thorned perennials bend. I want to wake every morning into love where love is the question of how I'm gonna help you get free. Where that means whatever it needs to mean. Tell me again, your names for what we become. Sure, an incredible patience of your sacrum, incredible patience of the Colorado at night. This epic has no hero, only flesh, an evening which defies imagination. Wealth of textures fade to sky, low basin flora, salt, verde, the efficient grace of a Mojave green. Coyotes stay their lone nocturnes, mourning from every hole. Davis Dam holds the river into Lake Mojave. A transitive occurrence relocates power up to 2 terawatt-hours per year. Chronology and where it leads us, disoriented beneath velvet canopies of. Dearth makes empty the valley, unyielding, irrational beast. She, my gift to you, stumbling animal graft with scars. Her redding eye, wandering night without horizon, whipped exterior, wetting the mesas with her sides. The shapes we make as we undo. Your mouth opens for my light-filtered hand, a question best handled as expressions of time. Razorback suckers can live 4 decades. Larvae drift to floodplains where 1 in 5 breathes into December. Subjection designates legal flesh. Grammars of threat to be threatened, endangered, endangered by, to be in danger of. Warm anatomy shouldering each state. Thick muscled to tend uninhabitable fields. In your desert, I break concrete for the clay-heavy soil beneath. My father's daughter, I enter the earth each evening in quiet. Dream into seeds and dried blood. Thermal medicine. Tony Braxton, Sade, SWV transfers my body to each seedling, then the night. The river devoted. The river devoted. You between me. Rich veined dermis, the lines of you I take for the muscle throbbing, what it births and makes light. Determine a form. I inside of we, the we fleshing us and us dips hot down my throat. We are the form from which histories ripple outward. The shadow branches the hollow of your ear. Wanting sleep, I've entered the field of your body. When I've wanted to eat, I've opened your mouth and birthed light. Sun breaks on the river, a scarlet eye. Sandhill cranes. When dearth longing approaches, the wings part into flight. I enter your river just shy of my locks. The dog, excited, takes in too much water. Views of my wide feet obstructed only through wakes. Juvenile coyotes watch from the dunes. For them, in Arizona, it is always open season. Invisibility is a refusal of trace. To leave anything, to leave nothing. BOGO wings for Boneless Thursday. BOGO for Kydex holsters on bravoconcealment.com. The degree of difference is the relative distance from being whole. I walk the dog, committing to memory the darkened color and shape of each car to pass. Time moves differently according to what one registers as death. How it must have been for the first beings to see stars, one followed by the next, tearing light from what they followed. Centuries in basalt-strewn dark teeth, their meaning increasing access to the probability of existence, which in the end is only aesthetic. Each map is a being, a scab to burn closed our eyes. Love, if you are where I am, how can they say the natives are gone? The slip of your hand, radial light, thrall and lunate. Genesis, that the world is made through understanding. That the world is made through understanding. There's no reliable record of how many Indigenous women go missing. There's no visible where in the United States where Indigenous women go missing. So no glittering ore, open pit, no complete record of how many missing Indigenous women in the United States are murdered. There is no record of how many women are then found in water. Found in transformations of earth to bronze from bell, metal hollows, environment recast, reduced to drainage, the sun-peeled skin which branches hold into their mourning, an already emergence of discord. The horse stamps out from waxy brush, creosote scenting small cuts in her thighs, gender-thick race marked, formed black effigy which is not oppositional, which is without harmony. Love, how could you appear but in glory? My lesioned cheek called to your hips by coppered sound, salt fragrant song and alloy hardening. Just 1 second. Okay. The revolution is waving good morning to us, a friend writes, but the video is unavailable. The revolution will not be viewed from my nightstand. I knock out just as easily with heat at my bedside. The revolution is turning from the horizon and waving hello. I place a shotgun on layaway. This service I haven't used since I was 12, since I didn't know yet to be ashamed of needing more time or not knowing how to use it. And when I wake up, the air conditioning still isn't working, and Mingus on vinyl and I demonstrating how to best scramble soft eggs. In your desert, I leave water, socks we hang from the cold branches of a tree, notes of what was damaged by animals, destroyed by monsters, what was likely consumed by humans. In the summer, bees hive the crates. A friend hopes aloud that they are not Africanized, possibly a breed, possibly a process. Consider a flushed stone, a room open to an axis of violence and drought. Coarse-grained mesquites split, the wounds amber overtaken, most beautiful in the morning, in a minute, in a frame of the time it takes. In your desert, I retreat to my garden while you sleep, wave my ass to a Deborah Cox I haven't heard in a minute, movement that turns eventually to a slow and tragically counted electric slide. Keeper of summer, Antares, Corvus, Leo, and Scorpio, the constellations reveal themselves through an absence of stars. The first rule of the garden is that we only play music my mother would turn up to. The second, we ask permission. Time is the point at which you accept a way to continue. In the dark, I practice yoga and dry firing. to unlearn the dichotomy of violence and self-defense, to unlearn the immediacy and agreement of location and breath with which self-defense must be administered, to recalibrate pressure and perceptibility as they are necessary to calculating uses of force, to know that force accumulated behind a forearm bears muscle memory of torture, fantasy, and pulp. Through dance and guided meditation, I learn which points in my body allow me to retch. I breathe long into a hinge of cartilage, then the feeling dissipates before reaching my throat. I let my hands pedal outward, one petal a frame and then the next barren, entering a landscape blanketed with dust. The question of weight, speaking coarsely, coherence shaping our faces, making love continuing to happen, the question of where to linger, when to open my eyes. I think I should stop there for time. I don't know how long I've been reading.
I don't either, but it's great. I say keep going. I say keep going.
Okay, I'll keep going.
Yeah, please.
I haven't done enough, and what I've offered has been with fear and knowing at some point it won't matter. I have a brother, I say when a woman asks why I come. This, we live together. The men who burrow for months then appear as wounds in our feet. Your Jesus feet, my biscuit soles rough from river shore. East on the I-10 from Phoenix toward Eloy, the interstate dips southward, so ahead Picacho Peak appears to migrate. I arrive and am demanded my name. A desert iguana slips from camouflage, sun along her pearled back. The door unlatches, then there's another. Years ago, he wrote that he was cold, particularly at night. Everything was expensive. A watermelon seed sprouted outside of the shower, and for days everyone watched until an officer noticed. He needed money for a sweater. He was growing thin. It was hard to sleep. You've said that in Mojave Afterlife there are everywhere watermelons. When you pick one, another grows. I still say that actually sounds like nigga heaven. I just want love. I just want to feel loved, he says, flushed with desire. The bartender, the social worker, his supervisor, his girlfriend tell him it's time to go. Then he won't stop cursing, so I hang up the phone. He flew into the air when the truck hit him. I told myself, tuck and roll, nigga, tuck and roll. So he walks away with no injuries. Then that night, fear of staggering down the highway breeds itself to my orgasm. I meet a sculptor from Pittsburgh at the dog run. Hers is humping. She remarks that everything in your desert is dead or being hunted. We have a mutual friend, which makes things awkward. I wait, then offer that the inability to recognize life outside of the scale and terms with which one is accustomed is a serious problem in this country. She waits. Yes. To know this and still decline the call. One medicine helped before it sent him to mania, which is the problem with misdiagnoses, which is the problem with incompetence and general disregard. My refusal to regard is a measure of defense, thus requires constant attention. I imagine a light that visits free-living animals as they sleep. The family of quail who slip under our bushes, the brood picked off one by one or by two. The shelter provided to those who demonstrate signs of severe mental illness shares a name with that which is provided to those who can demonstrate relevant and immediate threat, depending on the country. Welcome to this country, he says, my brother. What we face each morning, the question of receding landscape, entering a country, the blinding trauma of emergence. On May 2nd, 2019, Arizona passed House Bill 2570 to establish a committee to address the epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous women throughout the state. Indigenous women watched over the Senate floor. After years of advocacy, Debbie Nesmanuel stood alongside her daughters, holding a photo of her mom gone missing in 1973. An epidemic produces a time, if not clarity, soiled unfolding, quaking aspen, abundant in Northeast Arizona, reproduce primarily shooting up through their roots, growing in clones across time zones, broad ranges in elevation. The crowns grow quickly, upward of 2 feet per year in loam-rich soil. Their foliage, glorious in fall, gold brushing cream, their toothed leaves among first to reappear in the wake of fire. An act on missing and murdered Indigenous women. Text of bill begins on next page. Unlike most of Arizona, Navajo Nation does observe daylight savings. In 1973, the sun fell over and back the roof of St. Anne's Mission, illuminating the rectory and each of its hogans welcoming light from the east. Aspen root systems extend centuries without interruption. Constellations beneath ground, damp-shaped ancestry gripping the earth. I walk my lineage, an animal licking at my heels, head lowered, long-muscled and hoof. Expulsion of an organism, variations in color, sensations of flight, a slow gathering disregard for food, the delicious hum of 3 a.m., wide-eyed days left unshowered. Ability to enact time as a verb rests on particular understandings of the noun, the flesh and rock of it. I braid my darkness to a shadowy mane, but darkness, rough and unforgiving, multiplies to its own beast, pores open, receding afternoon, your smell in my eye, I rest my ear in a territory streaked volcanic time. And stop there. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Saretta. That was amazing. I'm just, yeah, thinking, I've been like scrolling down lines that I'm just, and like thoughts that have been triggered. Thank you so much for that gorgeous reading. Hopefully we'll have time at the end for some discussion and questions. I certainly have a few about timing and the video. Also, like, even when like arms in praise dance cannot, what an amazing image. Thank you, gorgeous. We're gonna move on to Marie Hinson. Let me pull up Sis's bio. I wanted to like briefly share an anecdote, but I don't think I need to. All I need to say is that Marie has been—
Share it.
So Marie, so many people may know that I like ran for for state assembly, and I lost to a carceral capitalist who like receives funds from really horrible sources. And refuses to disavow it. And she won because of all the corporate money and slumlord money, among others. And on the day when she was celebrating her victory at the Board of Elections, Marie showed up to make sure that they weren't just throwing out people's ballots. Over 1,000 people in our district, their ballots had been thrown out. Over their mail-in ballots in June. And this is just one district in Queens, one assembly district. And so Marie showed up on the front lines of making sure that people's votes were counted as election lawyers, and all these people were just like playing a game with the votes of a majority minority district. And she did it on the drop of I was like, girl, I am overwhelmed here. And she came and came through. And then when my opponent was gloating about her victory, you know, being like, isn't today great? Isn't this just wonderful and great? Marie looked her dead in the face and said, no. So I love Marie. And the people of New York and Queens, I think, owe Marie a great thank you for the just fighting for to make sure everyone is enfranchised, because that was a lot of work. Anyways, I love you, Marie. I'm gonna read your bio now. Marie Hinson is an artist cultivating care in insurrection and poetry, performance, and documentary cinematography. She is currently based in New York City. Well, she's moving, sadly, but you know, Flatbush will be happy to have her. But moving from a resident of Ridgewood District 8038. So currently based here, after 10 years in Philly and growing up in rural Appalachia, her first chapbook, Please Remit My Qubits, a trans hex, published by Operating System, on birth of the quantum supremacy, published by Operating System. She has read and performed at the Philly Museum of Art, Vox Populi, Bluestockings, the Anchoress Syndicate, Crush, and elsewhere. In 2019, her documentary as a cinematographer, Queer Genius, a multi-part portrait of queer artists, including Moor Mother, Eileen Myles, Barbara Hammer, premiered at Frameline and NewFest. As a director and cinematographer, her work has been included in Tribeca Film Institute 2020, Network, IFP Documentary Lab, Chicken and Egg Nest Night Fellowship, Frameline, and other venues. She's amazing, my pressmate, my sister. Thank you so much, Marie Hinson. Take it away. I'm so excited.
Wow. Thank you, Joey. Thank you for including me in this. It was really special to work on your campaign and to just see be with the voice and the power that you brought. It really meant a lot to me, you know, having that here in my community, and to be with that, and that really woke that up in me too, that voice. And so just thinking about this moment of, you know, when we have victories or we kind of reach the end of something and someone is like, okay, like, isn't this nice? It's like, okay, I'm not gonna, like, let's hold that voice. Let's keep that energy. And so I'm grateful for that, Joey. And yeah, thank you to Book Arts, Center for Book Arts, for doing this. I'm really excited to share the Broadside with you, and to Saretta. It's really special to get to read with you. I have so many questions about the film work that you do. So I have a handful of poems. I'm going to end with the one that is included as is the Broadside that Center for Book Arts is putting out, that Delphi has been putting together. So I'm going to end with that one. But yeah, this series is all new poems that I've written over the past few months. Since most of them I've written since April. And I grew up in rural Appalachia. I grew up in a fundamentalist Christian community, intentional community. I was also homeschooled, and so I spent a lot of time out in the woods and the mountains, and kind of trying to find myself, you know, kind of instinctively, kind of apart from what I was raised with and the spirituality that I was raised with. And so I've been doing some memoir work. These poems come out of that, but they've also been this meditation for me now. I feel like this moment, it feels like I'm kind of living in that far-right fundamentalist language and world. Like, it just kind of our political landscape, our kind of energetic landscape is still that now, and it's been really scary to feel that, like, I never left that. But these are some ways that I've meditated and kind of cared for and tended to my body and spirit in this. So there's gonna be some music and some sound that will stitch some of these together. So if you hear that, if it sounds a little noisy, that's part of it too. Fear. Fear is my shepherd. I lack nothing. Fear makes me lie down in green pastures. Fear leads me beside quiet waters. Fear refreshes my soul. Fear guides me along the right paths for fear's name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you, fear, are with me. Your rod and your staff, fear, they comfort me. Fear, you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Fear, you anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely, fear, your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of fear forever. What the moon has to say. Last night, I opened the window for the full moon. It shimmered and shook, blue and white around its edges, talking to me the way the moon talks. I'd never heard it before. Before I saw it with my eyes and heard with my ears. In my kitchen, the back window of the house, the moon comes up along from the south and east, radiant. It also falls into my bedroom. I held a white lid to a plastic bin to catch the narrow cut, becoming, glowing, falling, filling the room, a silver catch puddle. One time a tree talked to me. I was walking on the hilltops with my mom along a dirt hiking trail on this side of the fence. Beyond, pasture, full of fog, a wet fog, and it wasn't the little tree alone that I took a picture of. It was the taller tree alone in the field. A pine, full in form in the late fall. Walking on Rocky Knob with my mom, where my grandmother wanted to be. This is a year after we gathered here to scatter her ashes. Now this pine begins to turn, the way the world turns as I walk. The tree begins to turn, but faster, with more steady force than normal. I watch it turn as we walk. I don't say anything to my mom. It turns as I watch, like it was shoulders and torso, wrapping around. The tree was saying hello, saying it saw me, moving with me, turning its face to me. turning its face, unlifted, coming away against the gray ground of fog. The moon talked to me too. I opened the top of the window and laid down on my back in the kitchen, the fridge whirring and blowing warm on my ear. It touched me, the moon did, between my heart and stomach. I shook. The early April chill rolling down from the window, I shook from that spot between my heart and stomach. The moon made its way, shivering itself along in splashes of blue and white, up the window as its touch moved from my face down through my heart. Finally, looking down, I felt the light crossing off my body. The full Libra moon said in action, a way of moving in the sky and a way of moving in my body. As the moon turns, so the seat between my heart and stomach turns too. I'm grateful to know how the moon talks as I hold its light in the lid of a plastic bin, and then I tell myself to go and rest. Reservoir. We walk out of the park and back into the city, feeling the line on line, the edges of the buildings going up. So gorgeous, clean cut. I'm not afraid. I'm feeling airiness. I'm feeling. Body and breeze with lines as clean as the buildings. I'm feeling the surface, and I feel sleepy, like I want to doze off to being gently rocked. Mostly when I feel this way, I want to be silent. Let the rocking rise in my body. So much surface, and I'm thankful to no longer be buried in the trees and the rocks. A body is meant to be free, to feel the breeze for itself, to move for itself, to care for itself. A body is meant to be free to love how it pleases with all that it pleases. A body should be free to carry an imagination of its own past, to be cut loose, to fall. A body should have its own name and its own place. It's easy to know this, how a city of words makes it so, makes it so, makes it so. That I use this city of words, that a body accepts an ask, that a body brings an ask to itself, and that it knows it will answer yes. Would you like your heart to be this big? Yes. Not much matters when the wind of yes moves the leaves of the trees. My body in this place. A place needs a body to speak back to it. A place needs a body to carry its pieces along, to think about those pieces, to return those pieces to the place. A place needs a body to make a choice, to tell it what it needs, to tell it what being a body needs and what being a body feels like, and to let the place remember what it takes to be a body so that it doesn't forget, so that the waters don't wash over. When the breath of yes washes over the trees. Obliterate. You descend on the mountain in yellow, red, and blue. You play in the hollows with a creek, born from a spring. You shine with the sun and the moon, within jurisdiction, without law, a name that should know better. Can you believe my blessing goes off at the right time like a bomb? I think the world to be had isn't here, but I'm telling you it is, as surely as you write, as wet as your brush, as warm as your breath. A willow stretches their arm, a spring comes up from the roots. I'm already living here, except in this one. I don't get chased. I don't come up on the other side of a gun. We lie on the sidewalks and roofs, and no one comes to force their property. I'm not wondering why it feels dislocating to be gendered away. I wake up and I write, and then I turn the arms of the galaxy. I pull at your sleeve, and you are groggy. You say, okay, and you turn, washing against the clock. No, I only see a valley with a river through it, a steep bank on the left, trees, and a river with white bounded boulders. A sun and summer fluffy clouds. What's the word for the golden haze, articulating distance, gone near me, thick in the middle, the back, the top? Remember, the ground rises up. Make the river curve, an S curve is most pleasing. Remember, a boundary is a technology we've used for a long time. You are a bomb that goes off at the right time, the wet paint that catches my sleeve, a sun rising in the fog of another planet. It's filing cabinets in the dust as far as the eye can see. Obliterate. I keep turning circles around the obvious. I could turn and turn with the arms of angels, but if I don't have love, I'm trying to outrun, chase it down, till it dies, and hands over what I want. A sun, fluff cloud, hold my arm while I walk. Have you set the river on fire? Have you forgotten refusal? Have you forgotten blessing on blessing? start by sleeping. Last night was a moon temple. I found myself falling into the underworld. This is an illusion. What I see of darkness and the dead is what I have to see with. The moon follows their own way. Last night, the moon did not show me their face. I felt push and pressure against my body as I sat at first through a fleshy wall, then without, as if I were passing through a crowd in slow motion. You'll take this with you, yes. Slow motion, like the rocking of a wave. Let go, you are safe in this push and pull. The more I told myself I was safe, the more I felt the bodies of the dead against me. Going into or out of, here is a radiant origin. What comes may have little to do with as the left is from the right. Lying on my back, a person in a plague mask with a beak sat over my body, myself, and held my hand. I felt heaviness and pressure in my hands. Before, the crowd was quickly moving. Visions, lots of faces, some fierce and demonic. Most were swishing, coming in and out again like the ocean. You're here now. This is your home. You're always here. I told myself this, and the person sitting over me told me that too. I felt my great-grandmother on my left side, opposite this person, trying to hold my hand. Rest, rest, death is rest. I was frustrated with the moon. Where are you? Why are you not coming into the temple that I've made for you with your face? Sitting by Prospect Park, by the Brooklyn Museum, this is not a protest. I couldn't find a living people on the 4th of July. The touch has been lost. Wait for nothing, all for nothing. I sit in boredom now in the land of the dead. Yes, there's not much to do. Is this all there is? You see, you see, you see. And hands hold my feet as if dragging me down. You live here now. As the moon rises full on July 4th over the Brooklyn Bridge, why are all the people here after sunset? Why are they all waiting and watching back to the east? I don't understand, and I don't look back. I'm reminded always of what goes on and around. After all this, in the aura glow of the moon, I say, you are here, even if your face is not. Your body is here. You hold luminance in my skin and my flesh. Across the night sky, the face is in the fall and the winter, I suppose. After all this, in the luminance of my flesh, I draw the death card. Y'all are funny. I lie down, I drift away. There, rest here. Start by sleeping. Thank you.
Wow, Marie. Thank you so much for that amazing reading. Yeah, again, I have questions. You know, I'm thinking like about ambience and also what Saretta was writing when after images. What was it that I wrote? That every event has its after images. I'm like, I'm just thinking about these things, but we're not. It's not time for questions yet, just yet. Next is we're gonna hear from Alex Farron, Alex Pentecost Farron, and from Jenna, who will be speaking on behalf of Delphi Basilicato. Alex and Delphi made these beautiful broadsides of our poet's work. So I'm really excited to learn more about the process and to see the product. the after image, which is itself like a thing. Yeah, so Alex, why don't you take it away? Thank you.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name is Alex Pentecost Farron, and I did an artist residency at Center for Book Arts a few years ago, which is how I got kind of introduced to that community. And so usually if this reading was in person, you would be able to see the broadside. So I basically just wanted to show you, whoops. Yeah. Sorry, just 1 second. Thought I was ready. So actually, the broadside was a challenge, partly because, I chose Saretta's work based on some excerpts. And then after I read the whole poem, it was clear that there was so much more to it. And it was a really challenging, and it kind of made me feel the limitations of my work, but that was okay. And Saretta, thank you for being so helpful and talking to me about your work. And you even gave me some restrictions, which was really helpful. When I asked you for them, you weren't restrictive, but yeah, you had said that you wanted the piece to be not too large, which was actually really helpful, and like an object that someone could hold. And you also specified that you didn't want it to show any stereotypical imagery of the desert or the people that have historically lived there. And yeah, I created this broadside. Another thing that you said is that you didn't want it to feel like the broadside, that the excerpt that we showed in the broadside represented the whole poem, or it was trying to stand alone as a poem. You wanted it to be clear that it was just an excerpt. And so I created this layout that kind of includes some imagery that stood out to me from the poem and felt like it went with what you had expressed about what you wanted the broadside to show. But you also said that the broadside was a window to the poem, and anyone reading it can have their own window to it, because it's just about so much, but each viewer or each listener has their own window. So I chose this layout that shows the excerpt that I chose, but it also has these hints of the poem continuing to the left and the right. And it even numbers the excerpt. And I kind of use this like fragmented sort of sectioning imagery. I just wanted it to show that it was a fragment of a larger thing. And these are just some images of it. I tried to get like a deep bite to the print so that it would feel like a tactile object in the hand. This is a detail of the side where you can see a little excerpt on the left of the preceding lines of the poem. The color I chose is sort of a dark, almost black, but it's red. There's a lot of imagery in the poem about bruising or the body, and I wanted it to kind of have this thrumming life to it. So the full thing is about 6 by 8, and it includes just a small excerpt of the poem. They will be available, I think, online if anyone is interested. Yeah, just thank you again, Saretta, for sharing your work. This was really wonderful to work on. And thank you, Joey, for putting this amazing series together, and also Marie for sharing your work. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm gonna present on behalf of Delphi Basilicato, who is here today. And Delphi, if you want to chime in at any point, feel free to do so. Okay, let me make this. Okay. So I'm going to read Delphi's words while I flip through some images. When I first read through Marie Hinson's poems in preparation for choosing which ones to print, the pages had fallen to the floor and were out of order. That didn't make a difference, except with Start by Sleeping, which was 2 pages long, the result being that I read it out of order. I thought, that's not bad. Then I started reading it as individual stanzas, like a collection of haikus, jumping around and rereading them in random order. I liked that even more. I started thinking, how about a broadside with the spinner on it, where you can read whatever section on the spinner, where you read whatever section on the spinner lands on. Spinorama random poetry generator. But maybe that was a broadside too far. So I reeled in a bit and thought about an exercise I like to do with my students. I am an ESL teacher where I cut up lyrics and I have students put them back together as they listen. That I thought would work for me and the poet. That's what you have, an envelope with pieces of the poem inside. After having read them in random order, you then reassemble the poem as you listen to it being read. A video of Marie reading Start by Sleeping will be posted on the center's website. I would like to thank Marie Hinson for writing such an ephemeral, evocative poem and for having the willingness to accept an unconventional broadside. I would also like to thank all the staff at the Center for Book Arts. Thank you, Delphi. Or the Center of the Universe, as I prefer to call it, for their dedication to keeping this center alive and well. Start by Sleeping was printed in an edition of 100, letterpress printed in Century Gothic on mono printed paper. So that's the broadside. Marie, if you want to come on and say a few words, you could do that. And I can show the image again if you'd like, just to spend some more time with it.
Yeah, I think, am I back up here? Yeah, this is the first time I'm seeing the full, realized version of it. So it's really exciting to see. Thank you, Delphi, for the collaboration here. We talked about the non-linearity in it and the way it kind of goes back over itself. And so, I'm curious, we're still kind of working on the performance side of this. So I'm really curious how to play with that order a little bit more. I'm just running through the thoughts of that now. But yeah, I love that it's contained in this in this envelope, and that it'll be an arranging and a piece, yeah, pulling apart, and maybe, you know, not even putting it in that order. Yeah.
I think we have, so thank you. Beautiful broadsides. I think we have time for questions. Yeah, Delphi, if you want to join in at any point, feel free to chime in. I have, my first question, of course, is for and it's for all the artists, like just like checking in, like how are people? How are you feeling? How I have, it's so weird, like being in this, like performing from the off, like my workplace, like we're all kind of just like sitting in front of our workplaces, or at least I am. Feels sort of strange, for me personally, but I'd love to just sort of check in. If we want to jump right into it, my first questions really are for Saretta and the found text, and like choosing to bring in found text, because, and like for that text to be legal, or to suggest the sort of like text of the legal doctrine forthcoming, and then it never, I don't know if we actually heard the legal document itself. Do you know what I'm referring to?
Yeah, House Bill 2570.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that found its way into the work. You know, so that's like my first question, but I also care very much about you all and want to make sure everyone's all right. Otherwise, take it away.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the legal text, I did not read from the legal text except for the part that says text on next page.
Right.
In front of me, there actually were excerpts from the legal text that I had, but I was picking and choosing as I was reading, because I was like, oh, what do I have time to get through and whatever. But I mean, this like, you know, poem is long and ongoing, and so I haven't decided if, you know, if it really has a place in there. Originally, when I wrote it, it didn't, and there was more information kind of about Clagato, Arizona, which is the place where the woman went missing, and it kind of like went down a little hole of that specific incident of her like disappearance and reemergence. And you know, lately I've kind of gone back through all my work and really just kind of thought more about the people and the bodies and the remains of bodies that I was representing, and like which stories did I feel like I needed to tell and could tell like well, and where I just felt like I guess I just had to figure out how much of everything I needed to have my like hands on and like be demonstrative. And I do so much research that I'm like very, like my impulse is to be like, no, all this stuff, this is also interesting, you know. But lately I've been trying to pull back and kind of establish some guidelines for myself, like in terms of, yeah, just like, I don't know, where I'm putting other people's business out there and stuff, you know.
I also have,
but that's all you have to have, the legal text, right?
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I also am thinking about like timing and the timing, the reading and the video, and then so for both you and Marie, this question would be about like documentation and sort of, I don't know, when I hear you reading and I see the visuals, and there's sort of, I have a similar sort of experience hearing Marie with the ambient sounds and tones, where, yeah, this like, in that your piece where you mention images and after images, or events and after images, and like, just thinking about those after images as like sort of like entities that populate the places that are being described or something. there's just this experience of like, of after image, hearing these two texts kind of palimpsested on top of each other.
I mean, I even think that that idea of like found text could go into Marie's work, like the repetition of that kind of ceremonial language. I really, really enjoyed, and like the blessing upon blessing, or blessings upon blessings, like. And when you said it, I was like, oh yeah, I know where that's from. And actually I haven't heard it anywhere else. Like it's just feels like it's from a very particular context. And in terms of like, you were talking about fear, like something like you'll always live in the fear, or what's that line?
Yeah, that's it. You'll dwell
Yeah,
always dwell in
well,
the
it
fear.
made me think
Yeah.
about fear as a kind of afterlife. Like, you know, there's the fear, but then there's the afterlife of it, the space that you'll always also still reside in.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I thought that was really, really beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, it was really well. I was really moved by your work, Saretta, and I appreciated this kind of movement between the very like intimate and erotic, and then the this kind of almost documentary text, and both in like what Joey was saying about like the legal proceedings, and then also just in like the descriptions of what you're seeing and encountering, and that movement is just so like heartbreaking, I think, or wrenching, or like, oh my God, this there's really a unit, like there's a unity here that feels right. So yeah, just thinking about moving across those kinds of different materials.
I want to say something actually more to your question, Joey, about like found text and like kind of an ethics around what to say and not to say and what to include. I feel like, and what you just said, Marie, is like helping me think about this, that as I move forward, what I'm trying to do is think about, because I have like all this material in front of me, right? Like things I've made, sketches I've made, things I've researched, and it's kind of like, okay, where do these things, what touches my body and where does it touch my body? And if it's from here, like if it's something that I can only look at and not really feel into in some kind of way, then I'm like, okay, that's not for this text. That's not even maybe for me, but you know, if there's a place where I can like physically hold it, whether, you know, in a tactile way, or even in a sense, even if I'm just holding it in fear, like even if it is just fear or anxiety or desire, you know, but when I start to realize that like, oh, I believe that this is interesting, and so I'm talking about it, that's when I'm kind of like, okay, you know, I can't just say things because I think people need to know, or because I like the way that I said it or something.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm really curious to hear more about with the film. What you think with that? Because I think that like that that's something that I'm close to. Just filming, and a camera is like a really just like really violent extractive tool. Like you, whether this it can be like whether this attaches to my body, or I feel like, you know, this is my business to put out there, I'm still going to take it and then take it somewhere else. And so that always makes me feel like really kind of that feels inherent to me, and images, sometimes camera images and images then in my work, and that gets like, that's a really kind of scary feeling to me. So I think that's just something that I wrestle with images in my work, and so I'm curious when you're actually working with like a camera image, like a film image, how that touches your, you know, how that touches your body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been weird. So, you know, that was shot digitally, and like it's the first project that I did with a digital camera. I came to photography on film, and I mean, the difference between like still and video and film is like astronomical if you're like or like developing your own film and stuff. So, but when I did get a digital camera, I was like, okay, great. What am I going to do with this? It wasn't very interesting to me, and I think I missed the tactility. And so, you know, I had this camera and it kind of sat around for a long time. And then I started making objects, and the film really started there. I was making these like the little sculptures that you see in the video. So that project actually began with those. And I was looking at these old photographs of there were like photographs of Black people in Arizona during Jim Crow. And I was thinking about, you know, what it meant to like Reconstruction, Jim Crow, like what it meant to be a Black person in the country at that time, like at that time when African Americans were developing these narratives about what it meant to be free in the United States. And so to be doing that, like, you know, at the US-Mexico border, like in such strong proximity, much more so than, you know, in the American South, like, you know, Texas East. And so I was looking at all these photographs, and there was one that really struck me, and it was a photograph from Russell Lee. I think I mentioned it in the reading. I'm not sure if that's part that I skipped over, but it's a photograph called Negro Hauling Home Water. And there were a lot of photographs that I was using at the time, but that one was like one that's just like always very present for me. And in the photograph, you can look it up if you want on the FSA website in the Library of Congress, but it's a Black man. He's hauling a cart by a rope, and it's like these like cylinders that, I mean, I guess presumably have water in them. But I think it was just like I wanted engagement with water and that shape. Like I was like, you know, I have no idea of knowing what this person's life is, what their days were like, what their dreams were like, what their stories were like. But I do know that they were in the same space as that shape. And so like, I was like, that's enough. That's a place to start, to have my hands holding something that shape in the same, you know, geographic area that person was located. And so I started making these like cylindrical vessels, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do with them. And a friend came to my studio, and she was like, "Are those for performance?" And I was like, "Yes, they are." Like, thank you. And so, yeah, and so I went out to the river, and it was just about play. So I think there are a lot of things about cameras that I probably don't think about enough in terms of like the potential for violence and the potential for extraction. I think when I go into it, it feels like very like intimate and like playful for me. And that's really where I still am right now, because I'm still doing kind of, I call them like my private performances. You know, and I do them. Actually, now I'm working on one that's with another artist. But yeah, I mean, to answer your question, I don't think about that enough. It's not a question that I'm engaging with when I make things with lenses.
Well, I love the touch of like this this object and the way that I hold it and where I am, and this is enough. And to like put that in front of the camera kind of reorients it around performance and moment in a way which feels really
Yeah, I want to know more what you're thinking about with regard to performance and the broadside. But first, I want to know, because we were talking about like, you know, bringing elements in. So with your music, there was a moment in the music where I mean, I think also your text around it helped, but where I was thinking like, oh, this is like, I thought like the lull before the altar. Like, you know, like after the sermon, there's like a time where the music's like a little bit low and like they're getting ready to drag everyone down to the altar. Oh, that's a question. But
Wow.
yeah, so I'm just
Yeah.
wondering like where you're kind of where's your soundscape coming from and the relationship between that and the text.
Yeah, kind of like an altar call moment, like
Yeah.
a come to Jesus moment. That's so interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
But not in a like, I mean, I feel like come to Jesus has a like a almost like a blind connotation. Like it's,
Yeah.
but the thing I'm thinking about is more there's like something desire, it's like the altar is desiring you. Like it's like a
Mm.
yes, altar call, but for your body, not for the
Mm-hmm.
like rhetoric or you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Well, I was thinking of like, hearing the tones, like in the long sort of droning tones. I was thinking of like binaural beats and like those vibrations that are said to heal different parts of different
Mm-hmm.
chakras of the body. And yeah, and what you were saying, how you prefaced, I also have this question. Like when you prefaced talking about like sound and healing in your body, just thinking like how necessary it is this time to I'm curious about like when you're like testing out different sounds, like what are they, like are you when you perform this piece tonight, are those like sounds that are novel in the moment? I mean, I'm sure they are, because you're reproducing, but I'm curious about like your practicing of those and like in finding those tones and in finding those notes um and then yeah, the pacing, aligning, I have like questions about like aligning your pacing and the reading to those droning sounds, but
Mm-hmm.
I am curious, like, are those are those like drones somewhat familiar to you? Are they yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah. It's interesting to do it over Zoom. Yeah, I've got speakers here, so I'm playing it on speakers. So yeah, the sound is hitting my body and filling up my room here. And yeah, this room is like my bedroom and studio right now, and it has been for a little bit. But to fill like a space with sound, and to fill up my body with sound feels really healing to me. I think especially like going along like with the kind of living with fear and living with yeah it's grounding. There's got to be some kind of grounding, and I don't know, just the sounds I make, like I'll pull sometimes they're basically at these big tuning forks, and I'll ring those and then send them through and process them. Um, so a lot of these are just like individual notes. Sorry, Jay. Yeah, so those are individual notes, and I just put them all in this sampler here. So I'm just kind of gathering sounds and living with them for a little bit. And when I meditate, I'll sometimes use this, and just turn it up really really loud and just kind of let my body be in it. So um, I'm I've done that in performance before. I'm curious how it kind of works in this setup.
It is totally different performing in, I mean, like I'm so like strangely used to now performing like from home with like full sound setup.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's in one, yeah, that aspect, because that the sound doesn't hit the same way unless you have like, I don't have like I got this, like this is and I unplugged it. So, like I'm gonna have to plug that back in.
Interrupt for a second?
But yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult to like hear the full experience, to feel to be touched,
Mhm.
to be touched. in the way that I would love to experience what you're experiencing in the space.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it does that's an interesting sort of thing to really have to consider in a performance, because it does create like a want, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like a want for you, or a want to be with you, like in person. Okay, but I'm gonna plug my thing in because I can't hear anybody.
Oh, that's why I was like, I have a question.
I
Okay.
can't hear anybody. Here we go.
Can you hear Joey? Okay, because no, when you were talking, I was like, can I interrupt? And you just kept talking. I was like, that's really odd. But no, I wanted to say, I mean, because we have, you know, a bunch of people here on mute. If anybody else, because I know I'm looking at at least two names who I know work with performance, and Cozy, I know, is the composer. And so I wonder if just anybody else has, you know, stuff that they want to share with regard to those things. Not only in Cozy, but Eileen. Okay.
I mean, I think that's a great question, and I think that the sound of poetry is so important. The singing and the tones. I really enjoyed that part of having those layers. Is really central to having the poem manifest. I mean, I don't know what you were saying about performance, but I think it's just so important to hear a live reading, and it's so weird to have this, like you said, this Zoom thing, but it's also got this great frame around it that we can be together no matter where we are. But I mean, it's kind of given, but yeah, the sonic elements are very important of poetry.
Yeah, and I mean, Maria, it sounds like for you that, I mean, the sound is also performance, you know, like for me, it's like I turn on a video and then I read, but for you, you're playing the sound and you're feeling it in your body. And so like you're also having that immediate kind of interaction with the sound as well. And so I'm wondering, I mean, is there a way that it's more of a, because I imagine if you're in a live space, you're having that interaction with the sound, but also like all of the ambient sound in the place and the energy from the people. Like, is there a way that it's like almost like a more direct conversation with the sound when you're like in more of a like a studio space at home, like you are right now tonight?
It's really weird I was thinking about that, sitting with it and hearing the sound, and then reading, and I just kind of kept coming back to my presence and like my experience with it, because that's kind of all I had, like, to trust that everyone here was with me and was sharing this space, and was you know, taking in that Leanne, what she said, kind of that sound of the poetry and that kind of song of it. But that's totally different, and it just kind of feels a little, I guess, maybe unnerving to me to be alone, or it kind of just felt unsettling. But so yeah, there's that was like, okay, like this is just the experience that I'm having on my own here with my speakers, in this really physical, embodied way. And then that's kind of like all I know in this moment of performance, and kind of staying present to that, even though it feels like really just weird, or like unsettling, or like kind of just something that really feels unfamiliar to me. But trying not to put a value judgment on that, and tuning in, what is my experience with this now, because I think that's part of those particular poems too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know. I think there's like a sort of virtuosic quality to performing alone. I mean, not alone, but in the space by oneself. Because you know, like I think I have this like running dream getaway vacation to Iceland with my partner, where I just go and I read poems to the stones and the wind.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Like how lovely would that be beneath the aurora borealis? Like that would be so lovely. But and so I think about like, yeah, performing. It's like this is my like long-winded way of saying like you're gonna feel an extra palm like when tucking you in tonight after you're reading, because you've like conjured, you've like read poems to the walls, and it's there's something about it. It reminds me though of like like those like woodland princesses like singing bird song and attracting all the birds, and how like when you're like a woodland princess, you're singing to the birds and they're all floating around you. You're alone. You're otherwise alone in this sort of like space, and not to get into.
Well, it sounds like, I mean, I feel like, Marie, that's something that I mean, from your poems anyway, it sounds like you do anyway. Like, I feel like there's a lot of like patience and orienting like your body to the birds, to the trees, like it sounds like that's something that you're already, it's like a life practice that you've had since you were a kid almost. I think like it's something that I just started doing when I moved here. So like that video is one example of it, but I also do it without video. Usually not with props if it's not with a video, but like here in Mojave Valley, we live like 5 minutes from the Colorado River, and I just go and I just like, I mean, it feels really cheesy, and the people around, I mean, this is like the reddest of the reddest like county. And so people drive by on like their ATVs and stuff. They're like, what's she doing? But I just like take postures from the river and from the trees and stuff and hold them and move and listen. And I feel like I literally feel like I'm like drawing intelligence and knowledge like up from the earth. It just feels really necessary in my practice.
Wow, that's incredible.
And I think the earth loves it
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Earth wants to be like seen and touched. And
Is that, did you, I get that sense in the film really immediately, that like conversation with the place or the river, I guess. Yeah, is that something that you had like a context for, or like I guess I just have a lot of questions just around spirituality and kind of talking to place, like yeah, just like what is my relationship to this place, who, like, yeah, there's like a lot of layers there, but I guess I'm just curious what
yeah,
what's your experience was coming into that kind of language or space?
So I mean, I think in general, like, my paternal family, on my paternal side of the family, like, we're farmers, and so I grew up like not on the farm, but all of my family who lived there and right around it, like the stories that I hear from them all involve that land. Like I grew up, like, I'm used to seeing how land plays out on people's bodies, like on and in people's bodies, and I feel like that kind of dynamic was echoed when I got here, because my new family here, like, they're very, very tied to the land. So like, it's just something that I think about, and because I don't feel very tied to the religion that I was brought up with, I really struggle for language around like kinds of connection. And so part of it is like me trying to build that, and I've moved away from trying to build it in with like description or summary, and it's more like I'm trying to build a kind of like, what I'm trying to do in my work, specifically the first part that I wrote, the kind of like growing manifesto, is like to to see if I can build an understanding of syntax. So not necessarily that it will come across in any particular thing that I say, but in the way that I say anything, like, you know, what are the relationships between words and between, not words as like individual synonyms, but like words in terms of their function. And like, how do I use that to establish like the relationships that I see? And I think that that has a lot to do with, I think the relationships that you see and decide to articulate, I'll say it this way, the relationships that I see and decide to articulate, like those are what I follow back to like think about my values, you know, like, and so that's what, and that's how I think about relationship to land. Like I look at my values and say like, okay, like how am I treating this land? How am I treating this person? How am I treating this place or this entity? And I think the language is a map of that.
Wow. Yeah.
I think that that's so that's beautiful.
Oh, thank you, Shannon.
I don't know if I think we may be over time, but I don't know if we could. Huh?
Oh, I just said we're mad over.
Yeah, we're over. If anyone, is there any burning question that we missed from the chat or that anyone wants to, before we say good night?
I was actually curious because I actually, after that, there's just a bunch of like energy and inspiration that was coming from those responses. I am curious because like it just popped up into my head when also there's a certain acknowledgement of the land that we reside on, and then using language as a vehicle to, I guess maybe not exactly like go out to just explain it, but in order to make sure that whatever narrative you're embarking on, it's still an acknowledgement of where you reside. And I was curious about like how language as a musical vehicle, how close you seek to either emulate or get away from the music that is inherent on that land as well. If that makes sense. Like, I might need to.
I mean, I have
it's
an immediate thought to that.
Okay.
I mean, I just play Sade all day, so I don't know that.
But all right, so I think the way, what I'm really trying to get at is that like, so it was something where I was talking to someone about meter, and so sometimes when seeing works that to the naked eye doesn't like scream out, oh, this is in like a sort of poetic form with a certain type of rhyming capabilities, but you can see even like poets like Fred Moten or people very incredibly like dense and beautiful, or like Jay Wright and stuff, and like you can see that hidden even in the language that seems totally removed from your normal standardized text. You see that there's still a certain type of form in music. So I think what I was kind of like getting at is that when you're editing your work, and like when you're kind of like in relationship to either other music that you listen to, but also the land that you reside on, of like how you are creating your own sort of like music and formulaic patterns that may not be normal to the standard eye, but it is unique to your own work.
Yeah. I think for me that like I mean, I guess the way that I can relate to that is time, which I don't have an extensive language for music. It's not something that was like, that I really grew up with, and as such, like, yeah, it's not something that I know how to talk about even now, but I think the time here is very is a teacher, like the way that that life precedes itself is very different here than in other places. Like, I think in a lot of places that I've lived, it's green in spring, or it's green in early summer, but here it's green if it rains. So it doesn't matter, like, it could rain in December 30th, and then the next day everything's green and blooming, or the same thing could happen in July. Like, it doesn't follow seasons, it just follows like the fact that it rained. And there are just like all these ways that the desert just has its own way of articulating time that I feel are very instructive in terms of like pace and cadence in writing and in editing. Yeah. Does that answer your question? It was such a good question. I guess I just need to think about it more.
No, thank you very much. Yeah, and the question was also to Marie as well. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's a really it's a really beautiful question. I think an image or a sound that I keep coming back to is rattling, like noise, like, and it sounds to me kind of like when I was a kid, and when we would drive home, we would take the paved roads and then hit the gravel roads, and then the really rough gravel road, and then we got home. And I just remember one of these roads had like a really particular kind of rumble to it, and it's because a creek was underneath the road and was kind of like devouring the road from underneath, and so the sound was kind of revealing what was in the ground and under the ground. And so I really like love noise for that, and like love if my images and the sounds of my images and the poems are kind of like rattling against each other, and kind of like revealing what's underneath, tending to the noise, like tending to the things that we would rather maybe erase or obliterate, and but yeah, there's that kind of image or sound of rattling that's really distinct to me, that I keep coming to.
I think so. Like yesterday, I was sitting and I had the door open, and we have a screen door, so it's like the air could come through. But I heard someone shooting, like we back up against like BLM land, so it's just like you can shoot there whenever. And I heard someone shooting, and I thought, pistol, like I was distinguishing for myself that they were shooting pistol as opposed to shotgun, as opposed to rifle, like. And then I was like, God, why do I even know that? Like, that it was like at least a mile away. And it was, but the thing was that I was like, oh, like I'm learning like to be here. Like, these are the sounds that I feel like you need to know to live in a place like this, like a remote place full of racist white people. And so that's something else about sound, I think, like that depending on where you are, the weight of them is different. Like the things that you learn that you need to identify are different.
Yeah.
Wow, thank you. I have so many thoughts. I'm like, because I've been thinking a lot about the here we had the 7 p.m. celebration of the laborer at the height of the pandemic, where everyone would like take to the street, to the windows and like bang their pots and pans. And it's like, how to write of that experience? Like, how do I write of that sound or that music, and the scope of it and the magnitude of it, like that all these people are celebrating the laborers. And then like what you said, the sounds you need to know. I'm like, as an abolitionist, is that the sound one needs to know in the world, askance of this one? You know what I mean? Like in that dreaming, and I don't know. This is just such an enriched, like, I just feel so thankful for your brilliance, both you, everyone, Marie, Saretta, the artists. Thank you so much. We could just keep going and going.
Thank you for that question, Kosi.
Yes, thank you. We could keep going and going, but we should probably let everyone go get dinner and do the thing that they're gonna do. So thank you so much to the Center for Book Arts for this amazing opportunity to bring 6 amazing poets and 6 amazing artists together. And yeah, please donate to the Center for Book Arts, support the artists. If anyone wants to share their information in the chat before we close out, ways of supporting, please feel free to do so. Otherwise, thank you all so much for being here and for, as we went through the election, because the last one was right before the election. That was, it was like oof. Oh my. Oh my, what a year. What a year. We'll send Broadsides will be up soon. We'll send an email out with all the links. Okay, cool. So thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Saretta.
Thank you all.
See ya.
Stay safe, wear a mask everywhere you go.
Social distance, don't touch your face.
Social distance, no face touching.
Good night.
Good night.